I'm overwhelmed, and as I often am around AIDS. And so I prepared remarks, but I think I'll vary and maybe sort of less structured than I like to be. I saw the quote when I came in here. There's a red one, it says John Belskis and Harvey Muller and so on. That was clearly a quote made by people from the ArcAIDS vigil you'd see before. All four of those people were part of the ArcAIDS vigil. There's no reason why all their names would be on one quilt unless someone from the vigil created it. I actually didn't start the ArcAIDS vigil. I was the executive director of Mobilization Against AIDS, and we did a demonstration. And a group of people with AIDS came and said, we're going to get arrested, and we want you to know, but we're not going to do it in Mobilization's name because we don't want you to get in trouble. And it was led by a person named Steve, Russell, and Frank, and I've forgotten Frank's name. And they were people with ARC. Does anyone remember what ARC was? Yeah? For those who don't know, ARC was when you had a diagnosis that you were so sick you could die, but you didn't have an AIDS diagnosis, so you couldn't get care and treatment programs, you were a person with ARC. It was a ridiculous, bureaucratic situation where people literally died trying to get treatment. So it's the ArcAIDS vigil. And they chained themselves to the doors of the federal building in the Civic Center. And the police, being sophisticated, said, well, great, let them chain themselves, we just won't arrest them. They stayed for 10 years. Not Frank and Steve, of course, they died. Many of the people with AIDS who were part of the creative vigil died during the course of the vigil. But the vigil stayed and renewed itself year after year after year and became an organizing around AIDS. It was a time in that period where it was like a tidal wave of disaster, 1,000 feet tall, coming towards the community. And in every group, and in every family, in every business, there were missing people who had died of HIV/AIDS. And all scattered around were people trying to do what they can to fight and hold on. And we were under assault by Jesse Helms and Pat Buchanan and a whole series of extraordinary bigots, some of whom hated us before AIDS started, many of whom hated us after AIDS started, who were calling for everything from quarantine, tattoos, a whole series of attacks. And people just thought, let's do what we can and let's hold on. And this is one extraordinary example of Frank and Steve saying, we're going to just chain ourselves to the federal building and try to make a statement for people with ARC. As I was thinking, there are myriad examples of this. I was thinking of one that came to my head quite a bit. Her name was Patty Rose, extraordinary heroine. And Patty was a nurse whose brother died of AIDS. And she came to me one day and said, Paul, I have a special relationship with Death Valley. I can ride my bike across Death Valley in the heat. And I want to do a fundraiser for Mobilization Against AIDS in Death Valley. I want to walk across Death Valley in the middle of summer to raise money for Mobilization Against AIDS. This is spring of 1985, summer of 1985. So we did, and people pledged money. And here's Patty Rose over 3 days, walking 120-mile heat across Death Valley, followed by a little caravan of people with AIDS, of course, who were the support team trying to support her. Raised $10,000, used those funds to fly the first delegation of people with AIDS to Washington, D.C. to lobby. And so this was the first time that people with AIDS actually showed up in the Capitol and said, hello, I'm a person with AIDS, and changed the course of the discussion. We were met up by people from New York City, people with AIDS, a fellow named Mike Callan, famous person with AIDS, and it was at the press conference afterwards that Mike issued his famous declaration, which was, say the words AIDS, Mr. President. So, as you think of the struggle about AIDS and how it got turned around, it was people like the AIDS Arc Vigil, people like Patty Rose, who forced an uncaring government, an uncaring president, to begin to start taking action around AIDS. And it didn't just happen here. It happened village by village, city by city, all across the world. In almost nowhere was the government done. Everywhere people rose up and just did what they could and fought. It was 15 years until the cocktail came, right? 1996, 15 years. And slowly the tidal wave recedes, and the community is still there. Many people had died. Many heroic events occurred. Many people did what they could, but the community survived. Families survived. The love survived. And I think the great legacy of that time in this building, San Francisco and other places, is an affirmation of humanity. That in fact, community endures. above indoors, faced with unbelievable bigots, the worst national disaster of modern times, people like Penn Rose, people like Stephen Frank prevailed. And it's, I think, the great legacy that, that will be remembered. I don't think people will remember mobilization. I don't think they'll remember Jesse Helms and Pat Buchanan, all those bigots. One can only hope that somewhere in the depths of hell, Jesse Helms knows that Barack Obama was president and gay marriage is legal. I would like to just say one last thing. In those times comes not just a legacy, but also something of an obligation. And those of you who were around in the early days remember, when we were alone and under attack, we issued a call for help. And we said, this isn't just a gay rights issue, this isn't just an AIDS, this is a health emergency, this is a civil rights emergency, we need people to respond. And they did. People of faith, medical community, people of conscience, people responded. And in fact, there was an influx of people, particularly from the medical community, who helped turn this around. And the community did not stand alone. To me, that means where there's other civil rights attacks and other health emergencies, that the community of San Francisco should speak up. We have an institutional memory and a unique credibility to say something. And I don't quite know what we do around Ebola, but I do know that politicians are declaring quarantine on their own for political reasons. And this is something we haven't experienced with. There's an infectious disease that has enormous civil rights ramifications occurring in the world, and somehow, some way, we should find a way to speak up. And I guess as for me, again, thinking about this, John Quincy Adams had a quote. He once asked, why did you work so long on the abolition of slavery? And he said, there are some causes that are worth a lifetime. And for the 25 years that I worked on AIDS, I'm greatly honored to have done so. And it's been my great honor to have been able to do this work and to call myself an AIDS activist from San Francisco. Thank you.